Okay, Matthew 15. I'm getting around this dynamic of defilement and internal stuff a little bit more. And he called them, the people, to him, verse 11, and said to them, "Hear and understand, it is not what goes into a mouth that defiles a person, it is what comes out of the mouth that defiles the person." Then the disciples came to him and said, "Do you know that the Pharisees were offended when they heard this saying?" He answered, "Every plant that my heavenly Father has not planted will be rooted up." So, there are plants that the Father has not put in place. Our job, ultimately, is to leave those plants alone. The people that are not going to listen, that you know are not going to listen, those people you leave alone so the Lord can deal with them. Do we correct them? Yes. Do we say, "Hey, you're off course"? Yes. But ultimately, the Lord is going to deal with them, especially if they're going to be stubborn and bullheaded and choose to resist the godly counsel that we give them. Now, back in verse 11, it is not what goes into the mouth that defiles a person, but what comes out of the mouth that defiles a person. We have this other dynamic where we have alcohol, we have beer, wine, vodka, hard liquor, whatever. The issue was never the stuff going into you. The issue was always your mental and heart state. So it'll exacerbate what is already there. It takes whatever is provided to it and it amplifies it. Kind of like money. The things that you take into yourself, they're going to mix with whatever is already inside of you. And you'll oftentimes have more of that. Now, I don't drink around the two of y'all at all, because I know what happened over here with certain other situations. Just like in a social context with other people where people are just getting plastered or wasted, I don't touch this stuff. Now, when I'm out with my wife and I'm not in y'all's presence, there may have been occasions where I've had half a beer and only half a beer. That's it. But the thing is, it's about those things that are inside of us that bring the defilement. And when we live a life of seeing other people mishandle the substances, it makes us less apt to handle the substances. And honestly, we have such a culture that likes to glorify the stupid behavior, the unwise behavior that is coupled with an alcoholic lifestyle or a drug-addicted lifestyle, that by and large it doesn't help a whole lot for us to engage in that sort of stuff. You might end up even dealing with alcoholics, and a fact that you have a distaste for alcohol will benefit you more than hurt you, especially when you're working with recovering alcoholics.
May I add a dynamic?
Go.
I think it's important to be aware of if there's alcohol issues in the family line, there is that possibility of a demonic stronghold that the first time you taste alcohol could bring it could bring an open to a stronghold of being led to being addicted to it, become alcoholic yourself. So be aware of that, and pray through it. Really, like everything else, before you enter that zone, it's wise to have a conversation with Father about it, because He may just say, "You know what? I think for you, I think you're better off not touching it at all," or might say, "Sure, if you wanted to, have it in moderation and you can keep it under control and, drink in an appropriate situation," because Daddy's right. There are people who would, anybody who's like bringing the word, there are groups of people that would say you can never drink a drop of alcohol. And that's not biblical, but
Yep.
there are definitely people that feel that way. And so it's like Paul says, you want to be careful of the people around you, not to make them stumble. So obviously, if we're with a group of people that will feel that way, we're not going to try to make them stumble. And I know that even though his father had issues with alcohol, he does not. This is not an alcoholic. He does not struggle with an addiction to alcohol, which is awesome. But that doesn't mean there's not a potential that you will. Just like I don't struggle with it. My father was alcoholic. But I needed to be aware of it and to talk about like with Amber or Lily. Because I don't know. There are other things that we struggle with addiction-wise. Like sugar is an addiction. Okay? Overeating is an addiction. Cigarettes are an addiction. There are the propensity to do something out of balance is an addiction.
Yep.
So, and that goes with alcohol or anything else. So, just some are more church socially acceptable than others. So, be aware and talk to Father.
Yep. The issue of taking the substance in was never the issue. The issue of abusing the substance was always the issue.
Mm-hmm.
I came out of that situation with an alcoholic family, but I was part of the cycle, but I wasn't the alcoholic. I was like the caretaker, the caregiver, the enabler, whatever the case. And in order to keep the peace, I would not say anything, which is also not good too, because if you, after a while, when the person who's not doing it, who's taking care of the person is doing it, has this continual set of powerlessness, they end up blowing their top. And one of my struggles that I deal with is anger. Anger due to powerlessness. Why? Because I was made to grow up in situations where I was not able to say, hey, what you're doing is wrong, stop it, and them actually listen. So, part of the reason why I struggle with anger, which is still sinful, of course, it's not what comes into a man but goes out of a man that defiles him, is this dynamic of anger. So, a lot of times when we deal with these sorts of things, we have to say, okay, what's at the root? And we seek to ask the Father, verse 14, to root those things up that are not of Him, so that He can transform us, because He made us to be transformed. He designed us for transformation. So, those are a couple of dynamics. I didn't expect I was going to cover them this morning, but I did. And just some thoughts for us to consider this morning as we look at Matthew 15 and the concept of defilement and the sources of defilement. Now, we love you guys, and we bless you today. Be sober and be vigilant, for your adversary, the devil, roams about seeking whom he may devour. Be blessed.